This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I've been calling the X-Zone for the past 24 years. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And our main website for the radio show where you can listen to the live broadcast or the daily refeeds that we put on there with our compliments at www.xzoneradiotv.com, and that is 24/7, 365. It is the 1st of September today. That means 29 days and counting until we have our first UFO debate here on the X-Zone, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, as well as our good friends on the Starcom Radio Network. The debate is going to be between Stanton T. Friedman, the great-grandfather of ufology, and Michael Horn. The topic of the debate, the Billy Meyer case. The debate is from 8 p.m. until 10 p.m., and then from 10 p.m. until midnight, we have live coverage of a roundhouse table that we're going to be hosting here in our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Exonation, as you know, as we get closer to October 31st, ghosts, hauntings, things that go in the night are a major topic that is requested by listeners of all ages from all parts of the world. And I must say my guest this hour has been a guest on the X-Zone. He's considered a good friend of the X-Zone. And if there's anyone who knows anything about the ghosts of Gettysburg, this is the man. He is the expert. Not only is he a tour guide, but he is also a former National Park Service ranger and historian. Now he's a licensed battlefield guide in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. He's also an author of the Ghost of Gettysburg series. Joining me now is the one and only Mark Nesbitt, and you've probably seen him on, let me see, the History Channel, A&E, the Discovery Channel, the Travel Channel, Unsolved Mysteries, and other television shows, not only in the U.S., but worldwide. And Mark, welcome back to the X-Zone. Great having you with us again, my friend.
Well, thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. Yeah, one quick correction: I am no longer a licensed battlefield guide, but I was one.
Oh,
and you know, unless it's like being a Marine, you know, once a Marine, always a Marine. You're never an ex-Marine. I mean, you don't forget a lot once you do dozens and hundreds of battlefield tours. But I don't want to get anybody in Gettysburg upset. Well, if they're listening tonight. So, everything else he said was absolutely true.
Let's face it, Mark. If it wasn't for you, Gettysburg wouldn't even be on the map anymore.
Yeah, me and about 200,000 Union and Confederate soldiers who fought there. Yeah.
Oh, heavens. So you're doing well. You're still doing tours, I would imagine?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have our Ghosts of Gettysburg candlelight walking tours. We're in our... Oh, boy, let's see, since 1994, so 21st season of giving those tours of the town, and which was part of the battlefield, as you know. And, of course, we have our own building there, which is a Civil War building, which is kind of neat because when I later on in my career got from just collecting the stories to investigating, doing paranormal investigations, it serves as kind of like a laboratory. You know, when you own the place, you can lock it down overnight. You know, completely control the environment. and get to know it very well, so you know what every board that squeaks in the floor. And it's kind of neat to be able to do some experiments, which we've been doing in the paranormal there, and doing research and everything. So yeah, Gettysburg, of course, is our home base. You may know that we also started in 2006 Ghosts of Fredericksburg, Virginia, another major Civil War battlefield. And I had a tremendous opportunity not too long ago, 2 years ago, as a matter of fact, to do a book for Stackpole Publications called Civil War Ghost Trails. Got an opportunity to go to all the major Civil War battlefields in the country and collect their ghost stories, and also write up their history, then tell the ghost stories and actually do a little investigating at almost every one of them there. So it's been a busy few years since I spoke with you last, Rob.
It sure has, and I'm glad to hear that you're still doing what you do. But tell me, what got you interested in the ghosts of Gettysburg?
Well, as you had mentioned, I was a park ranger there for a number of years in my early career. And one of the things they do with the park rangers is they put you in the historic buildings out on the park to live. You've seen the beautiful stone houses and wood houses, the Civil War houses, and unfortunately they had been at one time hospitals and that type of thing for the wounded soldiers. And strange things would happen to me. Unexplainable things would happen to me in these houses. For example, I lived in the cemetery for a while, the National Cemetery there, the Cemetery Lodge, we called it. And I one day I was taking my dishes in the middle of the afternoon out from the dining room to the kitchen, and I heard a baby cry. My head is going like, wait a minute, what? That can't be a baby. I heard, it was a pipes. No, it's not the pipes. It's this, the whatever. Couldn't place it. So I casually mentioned it to someone in the coffee room the next day, and they were like, you have to talk to such and such who lived in that house before you. So I interviewed them, and sure enough, they had heard babies crying there. And in other houses that I had lived in, things would happen, and people who lived in those houses before me had the same experiences. So the little hamster got on the wheel, in my head, and I'm thinking, something's going on here. Is it true? Could Gettysburg really be haunted? And the more I collected, the more I realized certainly these stories, not everybody's hallucinating, not everybody's crazy, so there must be something to them. And, of course, it took me about 10 years to collect the stories for that very first book, Ghosts of Gettysburg, the first one. And within 2 weeks after that book came out, I was getting letters, phone calls, faxes. This is before tweets or Twitters or whatever. And I started getting people telling me, this is what happened to me at Gettysburg. And so I'd interview them and eventually had enough stories from these people and my own experiences and later doing investigations to finally end up with 7 volumes of Ghosts of Gettysburg, and working on an 8th too. As a matter of fact, we have that many stories. So that's how it got started.
But before you worked for the National Park Service and you were a ranger at Gettysburg, did you believe in ghosts?
Well, I always had that interest. What goes on after we die? And you hear ghost stories and you see stuff on TV, and you think, well, maybe not. I don't know, know. But then it started, it was always an interest, just a casual interest. But when, I moved to Gettysburg and I started hearing more and more stories and talking to people who had experienced these, and then started experiencing some things myself, hearing more and more stories as the years went on. Then it became more of a, I don't want to say an obsession, but certainly high up on the list of interests I had in studying, collecting, and studying these stories and the phenomenon.
Exonation, Mark Nesbitt is our special guest this hour. His website is www.ghostsofgettysburg.com. And let me ask you this very simple question, and I'm sure you get this question many, many, many times, Mark, no matter where you are, but why do the ghosts remain in Gettysburg? Why don't they go to the light?
Well, that is a good question. I do get that quite frequently, and I had heard a medium once give a talk, and she listed several reasons why she thought that spirits linger. And several of those, is right off the top of my head, is unfinished business,
Right.
Youthful death. These are all going to sound familiar because we've heard of them. A sudden death,
Right.
an unexpected death. You don't expect to die. Expect to go into this battle and come out again like you did the last four. A particularly traumatic death, which anyone who faced cannons in the Civil War in a battle certainly suffered a traumatic death. A fear of judgment. Many of the men who fought in the Battle of Gettysburg in the Civil War were very, very religious, believed that they were going to be judged when it was all over, and they just refused to move on. They're a little, frightened. And also, and particularly in battlefields, some people have a belief that an unconsecrated burial has something to do with their not being able to move on, including those who died,
right.
if there is any consciousness that remains. And of course, at Gettysburg, every soldier that died there on the battlefield was buried at least twice. First, where he fell in battle, and second, then when they exhumed the body to take the Union soldiers up to the National Cemetery. There were so many graves all over, and remember, this was not a national park. These are people's fields and people's backyards. So they got the Union soldiers and sent them up, reburied them, exhumed them, reburied them in the National Cemetery. And of course, in November of 1863, Lincoln came and consecrated the ground with the Gettysburg Address and the ceremonies there. That's just the Union soldiers. The Confederate soldiers remained buried on the battlefield for another 6 or 7 years until the early 1870s. And they then were exhumed and taken south, and then eventually were buried in consecrated ground in the South. However, and this is a big however, the Park Service has finally admitted that there's anywhere from 300 to 900 unaccounted for, that we don't know that they got them. In other words, they're probably still buried out on the battlefield. In fact, the most recent set of remains was found 1996, I believe. And so they're still finding bodies or remains out there on the battlefield. So not all of them were. Many are still buried out there. Right? Have
any of the ghosts that haunt the Gettysburg area, have they ever been identified?
I have collected almost 1,000 or a little better than 1,000 stories of Gettysburg and other surrounding environs, and there was only one that I ever identified as an individual personality, and that was John Reynolds, the general who was killed within 15 minutes of him taking his troops into battle. He was shot in the back of the neck and killed almost immediately. And how this happened was, I got a call from a Lutheran seminarian. We have a seminary west of Gettysburg. It's right in the vicinity where John Reynolds was killed, and also where his body was taken on the pathway where today modern dormitories stand. And this fella, who was a seminarian, said to me, he called me up. He said, I had a really weird experience. He says, I got to tell you about this. He said, first of all, the other night, he says, I was awakened about 1 o'clock by my friend down the hall screaming. He said, I didn't know what he was doing. I thought maybe he was trying. I knew he was ex-Army. Maybe doing one of his battle yells or whatever.
Right.
And I ignored it and fell asleep. He said, about an hour later, I woke up. I thought I had left a window open. It was so cold in my room. I opened my eyes, and there was a figure in my room. I could only see him from the waist up, dark beard, dark face, and I yelled at him, and he wouldn't go away. I prayed, I yelled, he wouldn't go away. Finally, I started to get up to defend myself. I thought I was an intruder, and he vanished. He said, a couple days later, I ran into my friend, and he said, I said, hey, what was going on? Why'd you scream the other night? And he got dead serious, and he said, I had a vision in my room. I had a face in my room, dark face, beard, and his head just floated in my room, and it scared me so badly I screamed. So he basically described the same man. I got a series of photographs of several generals that fought in the Battle of Gettysburg, and I took them to this fellow, and I said, any one of these fellows, the guy you saw? And he looked, and he said, that's him. And he pointed out John Reynolds. So, but that is the only one that I know of that I can ID. And he has actually been seen in another place, the place where his body was taken right after he was killed. He was seen at least twice by tourists going by at night, looking in a window, and all of a sudden they see this general officer lying on a cot in this building. And when they go back the next day, where the cot was is their counter. In other words, it obviously wasn't a wax figure or anything.
Sure.
And they describe Reynolds. They describe the dark face and the beard and everything like that. So,
have any ghosts of the horses been seen, or soldiers riding horses?
Yeah. Yes, I have a couple of accounts of people seeing mounted men. One was on Little Round Top. The woman described, and he was, she said, I thought it was a reenactor, but he disappeared. So, reenactors are pretty clever, but they can't just vanish.
Not usually,
before
anyway.
your eyes. Yeah. And I had a friend who lived out near East Cavalry Battlefield on Low Dutch Road. And one night she was awakened by, she said it sounded like a cavalry charge. And she opened her window, and she couldn't see anything, but she heard what sounded like hundreds and hundreds of hoofbeats outside on the road outside her farmhouse. And of course, this is in the middle of nowhere, so she was kind of freaked out. And then the Cashtown Inn also, that's about 7 miles west of town. They have had customers who are awakened in the middle of the night by horses whinnying, and they look outside and no one's there. And of course, the Cashtown Inn was the point that was kind of like the rallying point for the Confederate Army before they moved into Gettysburg on the 1st of July, the very first day of the battle. Several officers had their headquarters there. Lee came by there, talked to A.P. Hill. So it's very, very historic, and there were historically horses tied out in front of that place, the Cashtown Inn. So, yes, in other words, animals and horses, mostly domestic animals, can be ghosts.
What about? Is there any specific time of year that the area is more active with apparitions and ghosts than any other part of the year?
I get that a lot, especially around the anniversary of the battle, which is July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And my answer to that is, it's hard to tell because that's the 4th of July weekend.
Right.
So I do get a lot of stories from the anniversary, but is it because it's the anniversary or because there's so many more people in Gettysburg to witness something? You know what I mean? In other words, it could be just as active in Gettysburg in the middle of December out at Devil's Den, but nobody is there,
right,
to witness this. Whereas people on the 4th of July weekend, they're all over there, and so they're more. It's more of an opportunity for them to actually see or hear. I shouldn't just, visuals are only about 10% of all my stories. 60% are auditory. So you're probably going to hear a ghost before you see one at least at Gettysburg. And so
why is that, Mark?
Well, I don't know. I think it takes more energy to manifest yourself as a visual, a full-bodied apparition, whereas just making a noise or whispering somebody's name or whatever doesn't take quite as much energy. And my theory is they have to borrow energy from someplace. They have a limited amount of energy. And we get our energy 3 times a day at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The living do. They do not do that. And so I think they have to maybe borrow energy from various sources. And that's why people will go out on the battlefield with their cameras. They just bought brand new batteries, put them in, and they'll get out to a place like Devil's Den or the Triangular Field or Pickett's Charge and try to take a picture, and their batteries die.
Could that be a reason why ghosts hang around in hotels and pubs and taverns, because of the high energy that are found in these places?
I know that there are a lot of sightings on college campuses, and we know how much energy there is on a college campus, for crying out loud, on a Friday or Saturday night. And so I get a lot of stories from Gettysburg College, and so. I think so. Now I don't know about bars and everything, because who knows where those visions are coming from. I've had a couple of visions.
I bet you
coming
have.
out of the bar sometime, but in my early years, that could have been supernatural. But and anywhere there's energy, I know, and I don't know how people. In your audience feel about these orbs. I'm on the fence about orbs. I think most of them, 95% of them are probably dust, too close to the lens. But there's some that have done some strange things that I can't explain. So, and it seems like professional photographers, get photographs of orbs when there are like family gatherings, weddings, things like that, which would be a place of high energy. So, whether or not that says anything about whether orbs are real or not, I don't know. It could still just be dust, but I know that they get a lot. Professional photographers get a lot of those in family setting where there seems to be a lot of love or energy or whatever.
Mark, has there ever been the apparition of President Lincoln in Gettysburg?
That's wow. I'm trying to think. I can't remember in any of my stories him being seen. However, I do have a series of stories from when that building, the Wills House, was a museum, and the second floor was where his his bedroom was, and that's where he completed writing the Gettysburg Address. He finished it in that room. And the people, I interviewed the people who used to work there, and they would say that as, in a quiet December, they're still open, 5-6 hours a day, and sure enough, they would hear footsteps pacing back and forth in that room. And they'd go back to the room, and they'd look, and nobody's there. And they'd come back out, and they'd hear the footsteps pacing again, as if someone were thinking about what they were going to write and pacing to figure it out. So as far as a visual, I can't recall any, Rob. I can't recall any, but his presence is there. There's no doubt about it.
Where would you say, based on your expertise, the most haunted place in Gettysburg is?
It changes. I have heard several years ago that Spangler Spring was really, really, really active in that year, and they had all kinds of things out there. They had visuals of the so-called Woman in White. That year they had, I don't want to call them shadow people, because they certainly saw shadow people out there, but they also saw little scurrying type creatures out there that were dark, that were black. It was like they were, one person described it as like squirrels chasing each other around, they were little scurrying type things. But that was several years ago, and I really haven't heard that many reports of it since then. But that having been said, probably the place, if you want to go and have an experience, almost always there's something that goes on either at Devil's Den or just adjacent to Devil's Den in the Triangular Field. If you only have a day or a night in Gettysburg, I would try one of those two, and you may just get a photograph or EVP or whatever.
What kind of experiences have you yourself had, whether it be a ghost or any other paranormal activity in Gettysburg?
Well, it's, it started off, as I told you, with some of those things that happened to me in those buildings that I lived in. And it sort of continued haphazardly, probably until about 1995, 94, 95. And a friend of mine, Rick Fisher from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who was a paranormal investigator, called me up and he said, "We're coming to Gettysburg. You want to join us on a, for lack of a better term, ghost hunt?" I said, "Sure, why not?" So we went out on the battlefield before 10 o'clock, of course, because that's when it closed. So we weren't breaking any laws. And we did an investigation out there, and I got a couple photographs that I just absolutely could not explain. He was picking up cold spots out on the battlefield, and for some strange reason, he said, it seems to be a large number of them over there. I said, "Okay, I'm going." So I walked right out to the spot. He said, "Should be right about there." And all of a sudden, I mean, I just got chilled. When you're in a cold area and you take off your glove, and all of a sudden your hand just freezes. That's exactly what I felt out there. And that lasted for about a minute or 2 minutes. I said, "I got to get out of here. I'm freezing." So I walked away, and sure enough, the temperature rose again, and I was fine. Well, that kind of got me hooked, needless to say. And I started doing my own investigations with a little team that I pulled together, and have been doing that ever since then. And so my experiences since have gone from being a collector of stories to actually being a participant in this. And it's really to not to shock your listeners or anything, but it's really not anything like you see on TV.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. Like I call those so-called reality shows anything but reality.
That's right. And it's not anything. You don't get EVP every 10 seconds.
No.
It doesn't happen like that. It's you got to have a lot of patience, and and it's not, to me, scary. It's more, okay, now what the heck was that? I just want to know what it is, first of all. I've never gone running from a place yet. I mean,
who knows, right?
That's right. So.
Based on your research as a paranormal investigator, what do you think happens after we die? Well,
I think something goes on. Mm-hmm. I feel that to simplify it, I feel that death is an opening door and not a closing door.
Right.
I think that there is probably a world very, very close to ours, that we our personalities continue to exist in, and that we can, often pass back and forth between the two. We don't show up, obviously, as what we are now, but we certainly can visit. I don't think death is a goodbye. Mm-hmm. I think it's a see you later type thing. And so that's beyond that, I'm not sure. I have the evidence, with EVPs that we can talk, that we can be seen periodically, that we can move things to make our presence known. But other than that, not sure.
Great mystery. Mark, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. Great talking to you again, and congratulations on everything you're doing, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
Exonation, my guest, Mark Nesbitt. His website, www.ghostsofgettysburg.com. And Mark and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X Zone 24/7, 365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back with Mark Nesbitt. Don't go away. wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. One Florida drug dealer made a serious mistake when he dared peddle his poisons on the schoolyard of Robert W. Morgan's preteen daughter. Morgan, a budding film director, tracked him to his hidden Everglades lair where his meth lab mysteriously blew sky high. When Morgan's demands to police to make grammar school playgrounds safer from drugs were ignored, he sought the counsel of CIA operative Frank Sturgis. Again, he was warned to give up what was becoming an obsession. Instead, Robert used his reputation as a filmmaker to infiltrate the mafia by stroking their egos and offering to make films for them offshore so they could import them as foreign product without paying taxes. When they agreed to build him a studio in Panama, Robert called the DEA and FBI and offered to work undercover. In time, their combined efforts revealed how the mob was secretly laundering billions of dollars through the Vatican Bank in Rome before returning to the States as foreign investments. Now read Morgan's story, Citizen Spy, Vatican Cover-Up, The Mob, Money Laundering, and Murder, available at Amazon.com, BN.com, and Borders.com. The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howell will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money in abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Welcome back, everyone. Mark Nesbitt is our special guest this hour, www.ghostsofgettysburg.com. Hey, Mark, has anybody ever asked you if you consider yourself to be a psychic?
Yeah, Rob, I've had that question asked, and the answer is absolutely not. I'm not very sensitive to these things. It's kind of funny, but I deal with sensitives all the time.
Right.
And I deal with mediums or whatever they want to call themselves, and I'm impressed with some of them, not so with others. And I know what they can do and what they're supposed to do. In my case, I really I can't do what they do. I have a friend who is a medium, and she'll be walking down the street. And she'll ask her husband, she'll say, Jim, is there a guy leaning against that telephone pole? And he'll look at the pole and he'll go, no. She goes, oh, okay. I just want to make sure it was a ghost. And I'm not like that at all. Any type of experience that I've had seems to be random. I can't call it up on my own. I can't call the power or right. the ability up like they can. It seems to have been random. I've had, say, 3 visuals. I've been touched a few times, and I think it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time. Gettysburg, of course, is a big part of it because it with the battle and all the souls that went on their fantastic journey. In those 3 days and in the weeks or so afterwards, when the wounded started dying, the battle seemed to be the perfect storm for creating ghosts. In other words, you had not only the ones that were killed outright, but you had men who suffered for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards as they were dying, worrying about their families. The emotional energy was so high, even prior to the battle. When the rumors of the 2 armies were going through the town of Gettysburg. The emotion was just so high. It was an emotional time. My goodness, the American Civil War, the country was splitting apart. So I think that being in Gettysburg has a lot to do with actual experiences that I've had, more so than me being any kind of sensitive. So,
how many people actually died during the Battle of Gettysburg?
Well, the casualty figures are 51,000, and that's killed, wounded, and missing. Okay, that's not all dead. Killed, wounded, and missing, which means missing could be anything from ran away to liquefied in front of a cannon. You know what I mean? Just nothing left of them. The wounded, of course, were wounded by, say, July 4th or July 5th. The problem with that is once you were wounded, they started probing the wound with instruments that weren't necessarily clean because Louis Pasteur and Lister did not do their work until the end of the 1860s. So microbiology was not well known, and so washing your hands off in a bucket that was full of bloody water just to get the stickiness off and then go probe a wound was not uncommon. So you had guys that may have had maybe a so-called flesh wound, not that a 58 caliber produces a flesh wound, but it's a smaller wound than anything else that you might get hit by. But a doctor would touch it and introduce some kind of bacteria and say, you're going to be fine, son, and send him off, and 2 weeks later he's dying of blood poisoning. Left dead on the battlefield, anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000. That is the closest they can come to figures of dead immediately because of the battle. So just gives you a rough idea of some of the numbers we deal with.
My good Lord, I'm glad we all learned that lesson.
Yeah.
So what do you think the chances are of somebody going to Gettysburg for the first time and actually having a paranormal encounter of one kind or another?
Actually pretty good. I've gotten a lot of letters from people who it starts off, this is my first trip to Gettysburg. I've never had a paranormal experience in my life, and here's what happened to me. A lot of letters like that. And so your chances, I think, of having an experience, your first trip are probably just as good as your 10th trip or how many ever times you want to come. It once again, it just seems to be being in the right place at the right time. So many times we think the onus is on us to have the experience, but it could be up to the ghosts too. I mean, there are times, and I'm sure you've been in the same situation, Rob, where you walk into a party or something, and you look around, you're like, I don't want to talk to that person. I'm going to talk to that person. They just might not like the particular person, that's
right.
there, and so they'll avoid contact with them, which, that happens too. So, I mean, it's a two-way street, in other words, is what I'm saying. It's not just us.
In your opinion, does the anticipation of seeing something, hearing something, experiencing something out of the ordinary, does that play into the formula of somebody actually having the encounter?
It could. I mean, if you are prepared and you're in other words, when we're doing investigations, everybody has their own little thing that they do to get ready, whether it's a mantra or prayer. I know a lot of people use a prayer of protection because sometimes, you don't want to contact the wrong entities there. But also, as I said, there are those people who go to Gettysburg who are like strict historians. And I really don't know how many people come there, have an experience, and just blow it off and just say, nah, that couldn't have happened. I'm not even going to tell anybody about what I just saw back in those woods because, it couldn't have happened. We like to make excuses for that which we don't understand. And so I don't even know how many people because I never hear from them. But, you don't need to necessarily be in the mood, but if you're going to do something like we do, it's good to prepare.
Sure.
It's good to prepare.
What has been the strangest, most bizarre story that you have heard or that you yourself have experienced, Mark?
Oh, wow. Okay. I was on the board of directors of a place, nonprofit that owned the Daniel Lady Farm, a Civil War hospital that was here at the time of the battle, obviously, and was bought by this nonprofit. We know that the front room was the surgeon's room because we just know that. I got a call from the caretaker one day, and he said, look, you got to come out here. If you want to see a paranormal experience happening before your eyes, get out here. I said, okay. Got in the car, threw my equipment in the car, got out there, and I said, okay, what's up? He says, this room has been closed since some people were in the other day, some volunteers. He says, I opened it this morning, and here's what I saw. Opened the door, I got my video going, I walked in, and on the floor were 4 or 5 long trails of a rust-colored liquid, and separating out from this was like a clear serum. And I'm looking at this, and I looked up at the ceiling, and it's whitewashed. I said, did a pipe break downstairs? Is this rusty water? He goes, nope. It just appeared. So I took all the pictures. I said, do you have a tissue? He said, sure. I dipped the tissue in this liquid, and I put it in a plastic bag, put it in my car. I was there about a half an hour. I said, my work is done here. I've collected everything I can. So I left. He said, okay, I got to go out in the fields. I got work to do. Okay. 2 hours later, I got a phone call from him. He said, "It's gone." I said, "What?" He said, "I came back from the fields. I walked in here. It's gone." So I walked in to the place with my camera going once again. There's nothing where that liquid was. He reached down, rubbed his hand. He said, "This is where it was, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he turned his hand around. He said, "What the hell is this?" He had a thin layer of dust on his fingertips. So we ran out to the car to see if that sample was still there. It was. It was intact. We sent this, the GBPA nonprofit was pretty well connected, sent it to a prestigious lab, forensics lab. They analyzed it. 3 weeks later, the results came back. The liquid was blood. The species was human. That's the strangest thing that's ever happened to me at Gettysburg.
Holy cow. That is strange. That truly is. It sounds
and there
like...
was a lot, Rob. There's a lot of blood there. I mean, it was not just, there were drops there. There was 3 or 4. In fact, I have a photograph of it in a couple of my books. It's just amazing. And there's no explanation for it. Yeah. You know,
Mark,
especially the fact that there was dust.
Yeah, that is strange. Where there was once blood or this liquid, there was dust. Tell me about your series, Haunted Crime Scene series.
That was fun to do. I did that with Catherine Ramslin, who is a forensics expert. She teaches forensics at DeSales University and was a consultant on CSI and Bones, TV programs.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And she came to me, she says, because she's done some paranormal investigating herself, she says, we do a lot of stuff in forensics that is similar to what you guys do in ghost hunting. She said, we ought to research some of these crime scenes. We can combine the crime with the hauntings at the crime scenes. Then she took it one step further and she said, we have CSIs. They run out of evidence, right? The physical evidence there. What if after the CSIs come in and get everything they can, we bring in PFIs, paranormal forensic investigators, to do a paranormal investigation and get more information. And so that's the whole idea between the 2 books. One is called Blood and Ghosts, and the other one is called Haunted Crime Scenes. And we had a fun time going to some of these haunted crime scenes. We actually investigated one in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I got some EVP, and we think that because of some of the problems that were set up originally with the investigation, that they're going to reopen the case.
Wow.
From the 1980s. So that's what Haunted Crime Scenes is all about, and it's kind of a fun read if you like the paranormal and you like true crime. That's a pretty good book.
So what projects are you working on now, Mark?
Well, right now I'm working on a book called Cursed in Pennsylvania. I'm doing that for a publishing company. Mm-hmm. And I'll be done with that in September. It will come out in 2016. And then I'm also doing a book. I signed another contract to do Cursed in Virginia.
Now,
we'll be doing that too.
When you say cursed, are we talking about gypsy curses? Are we talking about general curses? Or?
Well, sometimes you can be cursed on a golf course. You get out there and you shank everyone. You're like, this is not my day.
Yeah.
But we have, for example, one of the curses that I'm using in Pennsylvania is John Brown, the guy who raided Harper's Ferry and basically started the Civil War. And he said, and he lived in Pennsylvania for a while and actually planned the Harper's Ferry raid in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And he said, the sins of this guilty land shall not be purged away except with blood. Wow, was that a curse? Because it cost 700,000 or 800,000 American lives to purge the country of the sin of slavery. So that's the type of thing I'm talking about. In other words, they're kind of like partially ghost stories, partially stories where someone has actually kind of put a curse on the country.
Now, you were telling us that you went to other battlefields that were haunted. Where else have you gone where there's also been ghosts?
Well, like I said, I've been really lucky because this we sold the idea to Stackpole, my publisher, to do a book on all the American Civil War battlefields, and we call it Civil War Ghost Trails. And there's stories from America's most haunted battlefields. I got to go to Chickamauga, Chattanooga, Lookout Mountain, Shiloh. I mean, all the major Vicksburg, all the major battlefields that I'd read about from the time I was a kid. And we not only did the research in terms of the history, but also the ghost stories that were there, and actually kind of got some new ghost stories. What we did is we did some paranormal investigating while we were there. I got a lot of EVP at some of the sites, trying to figure out how do you put sound in a book, and without, driving the cost up. What we did is we created a web page. So while people are reading the book, they can go to the web page, and when I say I got a EVP at Kennesaw Mountain, they can look it up on their computer and listen to it.
Gotcha. What's your final?
Kind of a neat thing.
Yeah. What's your final message for people listening to us tonight about ghosts, about historic sites, the do's and the don'ts? Well,
always follow a protocol. I mean, if you're going to do an investigation, follow a protocol. There's a good one in Blood and Ghosts. I just saw it tonight about what to do, what not to do. Always check to make sure it's okay with the owners, whether it's a park service or a private place. Always check and be respectful. Don't light any candles on a wooden bridge. Anything stupid like that. And analyze the evidence with an open mind. I mean, it may just be an owl in the background, not somebody's ghost screeching. Always be objective about these things. Take lots of notes, take lots of pictures, and then examine the evidence in a dispassionate way.
Mark, why do you think ghost hunting is still so popular?
Rob, I think it's because, it's one of those things that we still haven't explained. I don't know, for many, many reasons, we've decided we're not even going to think about it. It's death. We're not going to worry about it. Although, we spent millions and millions and millions of taxpayer dollars going into outer space, and neither of us are going to go there. Nobody we know is going to go there.
Right.
We don't spend anything on death studies, and yet we're all headed there, eventually. So I think it's a good thing to study. I think it's part of life.
What do you think besides funding is missing when it comes to the research about finding out what happens after we go?
Well, when I say funding, I don't necessarily mean, funding from the government.
Right.
I would like to see scientists. I would like to see more universities get involved with this. Gettysburg College just has one little course at the beginning of their freshman year where they can, they call it Death and the Meaning of Life or something like that. And I think it ought to be a major in some of these colleges. And I know Duke University, of course, had their Ryan Institute. Stanford has something out there where I think they have a chair, a funded chair. But I think all universities ought to be working on this type of thing. I mean, it's part of life, and
it's part of life. It's part of life. But I think one of the major things that is holding that research back these days is that we're too damn politically correct. That if we started investigating death, certain religious philosophies and proponents of certain religions would raise a stink. And I think that this is
You're
why
correct.
And I think that this is why people are backing away, and it's the pursuit and the tenacity of paranormal researchers who are going to make the inroads here.
Yeah, I agree. You're correct. That the political correctness is going to, unfortunately, take over. And you also have, there are going to be some people on the board of directors that are going to say, "What?
Yeah.
You're studying ghosts? Come on,
Yeah. Mark, as always, whenever you're with us, my friend, time goes by very fast. I wish you much continued success. And please let us know when your next book comes out. I'd love to have you back on the show. And, maybe we should get you back around Halloween. There's a ghosty
well,
time.
I'm pretty busy at Halloween, but we can try. We can try.
All right, my friend. Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can buy your books.
Okay, well, ghostsofgettysburg.com. They can. That's our website. And they can buy my books there, or on Amazon, or just Google me, and they'll find out.
Mark, take care of yourself, and many thanks for joining us tonight.
Rob, thank you very much for having me.
Take care, bud.
Okay.
Good night now. Exo Nation, Mark Nesbitt has been my guest this hour. www.ghostsofgettysburg.com. Now, I'll be back on the other side of the news at the top of the hour at 6.5 minutes past as we continue here in the Exo from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, Wednesday. Well, that was a funny noise. I've never heard that one before. Thanks, Craig. Like I was saying, Wednesday, September the 30th, 8 p.m. until 10 p.m. The Great UFO Debate. Stanton T. Friedman debating Michael Horn, the topic, the Billy Meyer case. I'll be back on the other side as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Send an email. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you'd like to have on the show. X-Zone at XZoneRadioTV.com. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Don't go away.